The following is a segment from the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. If you enjoy my analysis and want to check out the full show, you can click here, find the link below, or search Fully Inflated Football wherever you get your podcasts. What a week for Sam Darnold. What a week. He's just good, dude. Like, this just makes me think of Sam Darnold coming out of USC. Was my number one quarterback, was a lot of people's number one quarterback. Just so talented. The arm talent, the pocket presence, the playmaking. This dude was a special prospect. And he obviously, has had his issues in the league. But I just think it's important to start with that about like what his upside is, who this guy was viewed as. And frankly, there's always been a piece of me that never wanted to give up on Sam Darnold. People around the league have still talked very highly of Sam Darnold, even throughout his struggles. And it changes this entire discussion. It really does. This is not your typical mid-career breakout. I mean, we're seeing more of this lately. It's not like you see this often with quarterbacks, and for that reason, you're going to be a little bit hesitant, sure, but it's just a little different with a guy with these traits who's had this career path. But let's come back to this game for a second, and then we'll have more of a overarching conversation about Sam Darnold. In this game, he made so many big throws. In the second quarter, he keeps it driving alive on a 3rd and 13 timing in-breaker to Justin Jefferson when he had to step it up in the pocket to buy himself some time. Again, the pocket presence, the arm talent, the processing, all good on that play. On that same drive, he throws the first touchdown pass to Justin Jefferson. That was just high-end processing. He's got a bunch to the left. They're running an in-breaker from the slot to draw the single high safety, and then Jefferson's going to kind of wind his post out and then bend it back into the inside. And Darnold has to read that all out in real time to make sure that Jesse Bates, the best true free safety in the league, isn't going to swarm Justin Jefferson on that play. But he reads it out, throws just a pinpoint strike with timing. Yes, it's good scheming from Kevin O'Connell, and everybody wants to say, just say, oh, it's all Kevin O'Connell. That is a high leverage, high end read that it's not like they schemed Jefferson wide open on this easy read. No, like that is a really high confidence, high leverage throw that Darnold makes on that play. So on that drive, just a couple of big throws. Coming out of the second half, another throw that's going around from him. There's a 3rd and 5. The pocket's compressing, and he throws just a strike to TJ Hawkinson on a crossing route that was like, NFL open, but he has to put it out in front of Hawkinson, off platform, again, compressed pocket, beautiful throw. The second big touchdown to Justin Jefferson was horrible coverage by the Falcons, but the reason that play is possible is he avoids a sack, buys time. He's probably 5, 6, 7 seconds into that play. He steps up. The safety steps up because there was another crosser open on the play. So he steps up to kind of take the crosser and account for maybe a scramble from Darnold. And then Darnold sees that D. Alford on the outside completely stumbled over himself trying to cover Justin Jefferson, and Jefferson's wide open out there. So it was a wide open throw, but it was made possible because of his play extension, his athleticism, his pocket presence. And then there's the deep ball touchdown to Jordan Addison that, to be fair, was slightly underthrown and was a great catch by Jordan Addison. But it was another play where he just has to get it off. There's pressure. He gets hit while he's thrown. He actually looks off the safety because Jefferson's going deep on the other side. It's just a true single high. It was either cover 3 or cover 1. But he holds the safety by looking at Jefferson long enough, and then he gets over to Addison, and as he's getting popped, gets just enough air under it so that Addison can adjust to the ball. It was underthrown, but it wasn't like dramatically underthrown. He put it out there in a very catchable position. It looked kind of lucky and ugly live because you're like, wow, that ball was hanging out there for a long time. Feels like a dangerous pass that Jesse Bates could have picked off. But you watch it back and you see that Bates was totally focused on Jefferson on the play, and Darnold holding him with his eyes was a part of that. So just a monster game from Darnold in a season where he's had a pretty good handful of monster games. We are talking about really impressive top 10 level quarterbacking. He's been clutch. He's pushed the ball downfield. Yes, he will put the ball in harm's way, but it's very much like a Jordan Love, or even at times like a Josh Allen has had, or Patrick Mahomes has had, where he has an aggressive processor, but he will make up. He's not turning the ball over at a rate that is debilitating to the team, and when he does turn the ball over, he more than has been compensating for it with big throws down the field, letting that aggressive processor lead to these big throws, these big plays, and showing up in the clutch, too. If the team is behind, he's shown to have clutch moments late in games to win games for the team. I just cannot stress enough, and I want to transition this to an overall conversation about Sam Darnold and if he will be back in Minnesota next year. I cannot stress enough how bad a lot of the comparisons people are making with Sam Darnold are. I've seen this be compared to Daniel Jones getting an extension in the Giants. People say, look how detrimental that was to the Giants when they extended Daniel Jones because of one fluke season. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Are you kidding me? Watch the damn tape, people, and go back to what I said about these guys as prospects. Daniel Jones, by most people, was always viewed as a huge reach, a guy that had a middling arm, no pocket presence, no upside at all. You watch the tape of him in that Giants season, he didn't play anywhere close to the level Sam Darnold is playing at right now. He had one great game in the playoffs. And yes, the Giants never should have paid him. Don't compare this situation to that with the level Darnold's playing at right now. It's ridiculous. That one especially is just horrible. Okay, I've seen them compare this to Kirk Cousins. Where like I've seen people say, well, they didn't want to keep Kirk around. They already made the decision that they didn't want to hitch themselves to a Kirk Cousins level quarterback. No, this team made a decision that they didn't want to hitch themselves to a 36-year-old Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles. So even if Darnold was playing at a Kirk Cousins level, it's completely different because we're talking about a healthy 27-year-old here, not a 36-year-old Achilles recovering Kirk Cousins, right? So that's ridiculous, let alone the fact that Darnold's actually just playing better than Kirk Cousins. He is bringing higher end play than Kirk Cousins ever did. That's a little bit more debatable. I think what we've seen from Darnold the last 3 weeks especially, that's true. The first 2 months was a little bit more rocky. You could make a case that it's comparable. But again, they would have extended Kirk Cousins based on how he had played for them if he was healthy at 27 years old. So that's just a little bit of a ridiculous comparison because they're completely different situations. And then, the better comps are Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith, two extensions that have been more than worth it for their teams, two teams that are looking at playoff positioning this year, of course. But even then, what Darnold is doing this year, obviously a very similar situation to Baker, same draft class, former first-round picks, a lot of talent. I would argue Darnold has always had more talent than Baker in terms of mobility, especially. But the pocket presence, I think, on Darnold has always been better, just in terms of navigating pressure and that kind of upside that gets overlooked at times. But forget about upside and all that. Darnold's just having a better season than Baker had last year for Tampa. He just is. Now Baker had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, so it's, he had guys too, but yes, of course, having Justin Jefferson and Addison and Kevin O'Connell helps. But Darnold's still making the throws. These are not layups that he's making, right? Obviously, there's some nuance that needs to be had with that conversation. I don't so much want to get into that right now. And then you got the Geno Smith comparison. Again, Geno's been worth it for Seattle. Geno's a very unique situation where he's older, right? And the breakout came so much later. But especially those first two comps that people bring up, Daniel Jones and them not wanting to bring Kirk Cousins back, it's just downright stupid if you actually watch the film and contextualize where Sam Darnold is coming from and how well he's playing and what his age is. But at the end of the day, of all these kind of conversations, Darnold is the best case situation out of all of whatever that debate was. 36-year-old Kirk Cousins coming off Achilles. This version of Darnold is better than that, obviously, as we've seen in Atlanta. Daniel Jones, this situation is astronomically better than that. I would say this is significantly better than, I feel much better about paying Darnold off of this random breakout season than Baker. Granted, Baker had shown a higher baseline in a season before that, or a season and a half before that, but I still would say this is a more stable full season type of deal than what Baker did last year, where it was more of a got hot at the end of the year type of deal. And I would say Geno was just more of a wild card given his age and how long it had been since he had really gotten an opportunity to show his talent. So out of those four comps, Darnold is the best situation if you're talking about should you pay the guy. The best film, the best production, the best projection for future success. So I wanted to address those 4 points. Those are the comparisons people are making as a case not to pay Darnold that I've just had a lot of discourse with people on the internet over the last couple of days. And that's just where I'm at with those comparisons. But we got to talk about this from the Vikings perspective and have an honest conversation about this, because the majority of Vikings fans that I've interacted with still believe that it's a no-brainer to let Darnold walk and that JJ is the future of this team. And they're kind of hanging their hat on what the Vikings said in August about this situation, where they really backed JJ McCarthy. At that point in time, it was an open competition. They had obviously just spent a first-round pick on JJ McCarthy, Darnold on the bridge quarterback signing. People have talked about how they've structured contracts and set this team up to be on a rookie contract for future seasons. Look, that's all great. And I agree, at that time, that is what the Vikings believed. Everything has changed. Everything has changed. Whatever the Vikings brass said on August 6th means nothing. It means nothing. Because when they said that, they didn't think this was going to be an 11-2 football team. Are you fucking kidding me? No way. No way. They thought they were going to be competitive and have a nice year and build into next year, hopefully with a rookie quarterback showing some signs. But they didn't think this was going to be a legitimate Super Bowl contending team. They didn't know. They hoped, but they didn't assume that these free agent signings would work out this way, that they'd have an elite defense again. And they sure as hell didn't know that Sam Darnold was going to play like legitimately a top 8 to 10 quarterback this season. They certainly didn't assume that. I can promise you that. And they also didn't assume that J.J. McCarthy was going to have a significant knee injury. So everything has changed. So the people that bring that up, that's also mind-numbing to me. To me, picture yourself, you are in that building. You are the players, you're the coaches, you're the GMs. You are looking at an 11-2 football team that has legitimate Super Bowl hopes this year and next year because of how Sam Darnold is playing and everything else that's been fantastic. But none of this is possible without Sam Darnold playing at the level that he's playing at. There's no way we're talking about, if this really was old Sam Darnold, with the way that, people just assume they're going to let him go. Okay, well, you can't have it both ways, because if we really thought that's who Sam Darnold was just another quarterback, we don't take the Vikings seriously as Super Bowl contenders. But you absolutely should be, because of the way Darnold's playing. And that comes back to everything I just said. This is just different. We didn't talk about those Seahawks teams or last year's Bucks as a potential Super Bowl team. No, Darnold is playing at that level, a tier 2 quarterback level right now. Now he's going to have to continue to play at that level to prove that he belongs in that tier, but that's where he's playing this season. I don't even know how you really argue that. Like, his production is there. I think the eye test, the film is there, especially as he's gotten better as the year has gone on, as he's gotten on the same page with Addison now. Hawkinson's back in the lineup. He's very familiar with his playbook now at this point. Plenty of reasons to say, yeah, he's playing even better. I'm just pulling up like the QB grades, which obviously aren't perfect, but it's a nice litmus test to confirm what you're seeing on tape. Yeah, Sam Darnold he's let's filter this down to 20%. He's fifth in PFF passing grade. He is tied for the most big-time throws in the league. His turnover-worthy play percentage is 15th. Again, it's higher than you prefer, but it's very livable. He's right next to Jordan Love. That comp is so perfect. Jalen Hurts, Jared Goff is right behind him. Kyler Murray, Matthew Stafford, Brock Purdy. Like, it's a very functional turnover-worthy play percentage. It has been far from backbreaking. It's just, again, the level that he's playing at is just different. But my point was, this team has, at this point in time, they have no fucking interest. And obviously they're very hopeful that this year maybe they can win the Super Bowl. But as we know, you want to extend that window as long as possible. And there is no shot that Kwesi and O'Connell and the players especially really have any interest in letting the season ride out and then going into next year with a 22-year-old quarterback who's never thrown a pass in a regular season NFL game. He's played in a preseason game, coming off a knee injury, who was a quarterback in college that had a lot to prove. A lot to prove. I mean, he won a championship at Michigan, obviously. I liked a lot of the stuff he did. He's got potential. But this is a guy that has never carried the burden of a big passing game in his life, or at least in his, high level in college. I can't speak to his high school days. I know he was an incredible high school quarterback, so maybe back in high school he did, but that's high school. There's no way that this team has any interest in banking next season, when they could be even better than they are this year, on J.J. McCarthy. There is no way. And that is why I'm so sure that they want Darnold back. The only thing that will derail this is if Sam Darnold regresses, which I'm not going to say is impossible. We've seen, Sam Darnold have some pretty low lows in his career. So if at some point in this season, I think he could even have a bad game in there in the regular season, and that doesn't change things. But if he has a couple bad games, or specifically, if he gets to the playoffs and lays a total stinker in what's going to be probably a road playoff game, then that changes. But as long as he plays at the level he's been playing at, I would say in every game other than the Jacksonville game, which, by the way, I will hold my hand up, after that Jags game, I flipped. I'm proud to say I believed in this version of Sam Darnold. I ranked the Vikings higher heading into the year. One of my hot takes this year was Darnold's going to play out the year. He's going to hold off J.J. McCarthy, and that he's going to get a Baker Mayfield contract. Very proud to say I said all those things. Unfortunately, I did change up at the lowest point in Darnold's season, which was off of an ugly, ugly Jags game, which is really the one point this season where he's hurt the Vikings. But, quarterbacks have a bad game. And that's really the one game from Darnold where he's shown those lows. And he was more dangerous with the football earlier in the year than he's been the last 3 weeks. But I think, as I said, there's reasons to believe he's starting to make even better decisions with the football and taking care of the ball better. So, again, this could change if Darnold shows to be the Sam Darnold that people seem to assume he is. But based on the film, based on the level of processing that I'm seeing, I don't think that's going to change. I just don't. So that's where I'm at. As long as he stays at this level, he will be back. Now, there's more to have about this conversation. How is he back? And what do they do with J.J. McCarthy? So there's kind of like three ways to look at this. Number one is the most preferable situation for the Vikings, and that's the franchise tag. That's another thing I've seen is like, well, I don't know about giving him the extension. Make him prove that he can do this again next year. And I actually agree with that. As high as I am on Darnold, ideally, yes, the franchise tag is the number one option. But there are two complications with that. Number one, we know how players feel about the franchise tag. Is Darnold going to accept that for whatever that might mean? Is there a holdout situation, hold-in situation? That can get muddy. If Darnold really doesn't want the franchise tag, if he thinks he's played well enough for an extension, I do think he has every right to be upset with that. But there are higher career earnings potentials for Darnold if he does kind of take that deal, play on the tag, and then he could get even more money next offseason. So there's a world where Darnold is happy to play on the tag. But the other thing about the tag is it does give the Vikings less cap flexibility. There is truth to the fact that the Vikings have assumed in their operations that they would have that rookie contract as their top quarterback. So if you tag him, that's going to be, it's the average of the top 5 quarterbacks. You're talking about a $40-something million cap hit next year. If they go the extension route, you are actually able to spread that out more and lessen the burden and make more of a team-friendly situation with Darnold on like a 3-year contract. So it actually might make more sense, even if they are a little bit hesitant on Darnold. It might make more sense to do the 3-year extension, and that actually could make, if Darnold played this well again next year, they absolutely would extend him, and that would actually be cheaper long-term to do it now. So there are definitely benefits to doing the extension if it's a 3-year deal, as I tweeted it out, but realistically, you're talking about 3 years, $140 million, probably about $100 guaranteed, but what you can do is put the majority of those guarantees in the first 2 years, where the third year is essentially a team option that's almost all salary, that if he's playing great and you want him back, you can have him back on a $50-something million cap hit. And at that point, 3 years from now, that'll be pretty manageable if he's playing at this level. But if he does regress, you got to live with the deal for 2 years. But the last year you can get out of it. And then you can put void years on there in a way that you can't necessarily do with the tag. I think you can still maybe put void years on the tag, but anyway, you could basically make the cap hit next year about $25 million. You could really make it as low as you want, depending on how much money you want to put into the future. But realistically, you're talking about $25 million cap hit in kind of a big window year for the Vikings next year. Again, that might be more reasonable for them than the franchise tag. So they might look at it, depending on how well he plays the rest of the year, and be like, this is a no-brainer. We extend him. To me, that's the likely situation, is a 3-year extension for Sam Darnold. And I think that's pretty good on the Sam Darnold side of things. Now, what does that mean for J.J. McCarthy? That's a very fascinating discussion, because you can treat him as a hedge. You can Jordan Love his ass, right? When the Packers drafted Jordan Love, they didn't expect Aaron Rodgers to go and win 2 MVPs. He did. And that kind of made them just sit on Jordan Love for a while. It's a very reasonable way to proceed, and maybe the best way to proceed for the Vikings as insurance. You extend Darnold for 3 years, 2 years plus a team option. And if Darnold sucks all of a sudden, which again, I just don't think is likely, but if he just sucks, you can give JJ a go. And, maybe you release Darnold in that second year of the contract, and you just stomach the idea that all that money that's going to Sam Darnold, you hope JJ McCarthy's at least playing well, and at least, you're paying what the league average is paying for a quarterback, basically, because JJ's making nothing, if that makes sense. So keeping J.J. McCarthy, Jordan loving his ass, as I like to say, very reasonable way to go about this. And probably what they'll do. But let's say they go to the NFC Championship and he plays great. And he plays great the rest of the way. And you just feel so good that he's the guy. He's 27 years old, has all these traits. There's no looking back. This is a Brock Purdy over Trey Lance situation, as I've described in the past. And you just shop J.J. McCarthy. I mean, I think J.J. McCarthy, after getting a year to kind of learn from Kevin O'Connell in an offensive system that half the teams in the league are replicating, you could get a late first back for J.J. McCarthy, I think, depending on who liked him in the draft. I mean, he'd have to go through medicals and make sure everybody's confident in the knee, but, whoever that team might be, I don't know, maybe the Raiders or I'm trying to think, like the Titans maybe, the Jets, like could one of those teams put a package together where they take their high second round pick, throw in a couple, a third and a fourth round pick, move up to get like the 26th, 27th pick, and then flip that to the Vikings for McCarthy. And then you're talking about the Vikings having 2 first round picks to build around Sam Darnold, where you could put another guard in there, a cornerback, a defensive tackle, a safety, whatever they feel they need. And you're talking about this team really having a go next year with Darnold. That's a great option too, if you feel super confident in Darnold. So it's fascinating, man. I'm happy to spend time on it. But I do think Vikings fans are a little bit too attached, I think, to J.J. McCarthy. I get that you're excited about him. Any fan base is going to be excited about the quarterback that they just spent a first-round pick on. And I get having confidence in Kevin O'Connell. I do. That they picked the right guy, that he's going to work out. Look, we said the same thing about Trey Lance. That he's a polarizing prospect, but because of where he landed, it's definitely going to work out. It didn't. And I'm not saying J.J. McCarthy's Trey Lance, but I'm saying it doesn't always work out like you think. And from a physical traits perspective, it is the Family Guy meme. J.J. McCarthy is not Trey Lance in the sense of, he's a great athlete. I'll give him that. But the arm from J.J. McCarthy, B+ arm. He's got a good arm, but never really pushed the ball downfield. He has never shown this incredible upside as a passer. He had good upside, but and sometimes quarterbacks surprise like that with their mentals and stuff. But look, you would be very lucky, frankly, if J.J. McCarthy could play at the level that Sam Darnold is playing at right now. You would be very lucky. And it's the Family Guy meme of you could have a boat or you could have the box. What's in the box? It could even be a boat. I just think it's pretty crazy the Vikings fans, the majority of them are saying, no, we absolutely don't extend Sam Darnold. No way. I think it's extremely probable at this point that he's back in Minnesota again, unless he falls off.